I guess in 1979 I had a group of young people, and that was when I had to really try to understand what was going on and to give some ideas to them, to develop them. And it was from this group of people that the sort of the important part of New Zealand rowing success came. I had 10 people, and 8 of those had world or Olympic gold medals in the next years. So that was a time where I really started to focus in, and I guess it was a time when I started to realise that I was a bit more interested in rowing coaching than, well, I don't suppose I wouldn't say teaching at that time, but it was starting to change over really probably. As usual, you go through a sort of an experimental phase, and that was in 1981, where did some strange things, had a crew that looked like it was going to do quite well, but in the end didn't. But that was, I'd say, an experimental phase where trying some strange looking techniques, I suppose. But, and then by 1982, I had a much clearer pattern of what I was trying to do. A lot of this, so I'd had to basically work in a vacuum up until this point. There were a lot of people to talk to, of course, but didn't really have access to the type of information that we have available now. And also at the end of 1981, Tor Nielsen and Sigmund Storm came to New Zealand, and from that, I think that putting the two things together of the sort of the technical way that I'd managed to get myself into, plus the way they talk about training, that put the two things together, and we started to get some quite good crews at that point. And so I know training's not on the agenda, but I mean training and technique obviously they go hand in hand. You can't just teach people some technical things and think it's going to work out. If they can't do it over a long period of time, then you basically waste their time quite often just teaching people sort of basic things, but not being able to sustain it for any length of any period. So, as I say, from 1982, started to develop a clearer pattern of what was supposed to happen. And I suppose from then on there hasn't really been a great variation in certainly what my crews look like, or certainly in the way I think about how people should row. But there's certainly been quite a lot of refinement. I'll show you some videos in a moment of people from back a bit, and so this has led to a much clearer picture of what I'm trying to produce. And I think that's really important, that you have to have a picture of what you want. You have to have a sort of a movie running through your head that you want your crews to appear like. And so if you haven't got your own picture, you really aren't going to achieve what's possible. If you just sort of taking a bit from somebody else, some picture here and another picture there and another picture there, you're not going to get what you want. Because certainly I'm not standing here and saying the way that I get people to row is the way to row, because there's so many different ways, we know that. There are certain fundamental premises on which you have to work, but if you've been, well, you've seen throughout England, I'm sure, different ways that people row with the type of success that they have. You see at the World Championships, it's really, you don't have to look too far to identify crews that come from Denmark or that come from Italy. Or maybe from Australia, or from, there's a certain pattern that based on the general theme, but there is a pattern that people row from different places. So I think, for me that's fundamental idea about rowing, is that you must have your own picture, and you have to paint it if you like. The artist puts up the easel and draws the picture. You have to have yours in your mind, and it has to be there, and then you have to try to get the parts out there in front of you to fit into this pattern that you have in your head. And basically that's how I go about it. When I went to, by the time I decided to stop teaching, which was in 1986, at the end of 1986, I certainly needed this pretty clear picture, because I was going into a country where I didn't have the language option. And my introduction to Swiss rowing was not easy, because I thought I could speak a bit of French, and I certainly couldn't speak any German. And so that became a bit more difficult. So you had then to be able to, through body language and through moving people around and through an interpreter quite often, in the early stages anyway, get people to row in the way you want them to, but without the ability to be able to communicate in the same language with them. But as I said, there's no one right way, but there has to be a right way for you. And but it's also important, I think, as a group, and I'm finding this in New Zealand right now, that if you have to develop also a national way that you want people to row, and people need to fit into that pattern, but of course you can't fit into the pattern unless everybody must have the same sort of idea to go along with it. But unless there is a clear picture, you get people coming to you from all over the place with different ways of rowing, and it doesn't work. I've got the situation in New Zealand at the moment where people are rowing quite differently from one another because there hasn't been sort of a guidance and a direction as to the way people need to row to be, if you like, a New Zealand style. So I'm obviously, and you have to be, a total believer in your way, my way in this case, but I'm certainly not fixed there at that. There's always changes within perhaps a band about this wide. There's changes that go on within there, perhaps expand that a little bit. But you always have to be learning from everyone, not rowing experts, not just rowing experts, but from the rowers themselves, from people you meet in the street, from books you read, and you have to be learning from these things. Otherwise, once you get to the point where you think you know, then it's time to stop. Okay. Yep. Okay. So in the brown, yeah, hanging well off his arms, pretty good leg connection, and getting the hanging point. And this is a thing, a bit of a fetish on my part, this hanging from the outside arm, because it's certainly something which isn't happening certainly in New Zealand at the moment, and certainly isn't happening in some of the people that I saw rowing in Cambridge on Wednesday. So here's a hanging off here again, off this one as well. So this is getting the blade connected onto the feet, through the back, able to lever the boat past the fixed point, if you like, out here. Okay. So I don't coach actually a leg drive off the catch, but I think I coach talk more about a connection at the catch and a drive relative to the speed of the boat. And so there's always a moment in which you can actually pick up the boat. It's not very long in an 8 going fast, and it's a reasonable amount of time in a cock's pair. But so the basic thing, just looking at the moment, is getting of this idea of a certain rhythm that is developing. This one a little bit slower around the finish than what perhaps I have people moving at the moment, but there's this pattern of movement of really fitting into the boat, into the way the boat's feeling. And the other thing is that this tied in with this training thing that people went on doing this for kilometre after kilometre or mile after mile. So they got this pattern stuck into their mind if they didn't already have it. Some people had it very, very obviously, like the guy, we won't worry about the shirts now, but the guy that was rowing in 7 obviously got a very, very set pattern in his head, that same as this guy here, and you can probably pick that out quite well amongst where some people haven't got the same sort of feeling as the others, but that's the overall pattern is that. Yeah, just keep it moving. Okay, so this is me moving on. This is actually part of the crew 94 crew, not sitting where they were sitting, but this is actually one of the best crews that was in New Zealand, went from New Zealand, and didn't do well at the last, finished 4th at the Olympics, which was really disappointing for everybody, because it certainly was the best and probably the fastest crew that's probably come out of the country But however, here's some of the idea of this rhythm, of this feeling of the boat glide, and you can sense that from the people, where their concentration is. You know, it's sort of in a outside of the boat in a way. They're just sort of floating within a rhythm that happens to be there, which they've obviously created for themselves. But you know, getting this pattern, this has to come out of the picture that you've got yourself. Just one. There are certain people in this crew that you sense what's going through their mind, or how the boat feeling is being taken through and being experienced and expressed through their faces. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I mean the concentration isn't on whether their hands are in the right place or their bodies or whatever. I mean, surely we've had to work through these phases to get people where we want them to be, or where they should be. But basically, it was just finding a nice, easy flowing movement that also made for making a crew that was fast. And this is the method, I think, was one of the best ways that you could actually, you just get a crew to row very, very comfortably and relaxed. And I think the rest of the others is pretty similar. It was a few years later, obviously, it's 1990. And I think what you're seeing is, as I said before, sort of variations on the same thing, of people doing same sort of thing, same sort of same sort of concentration. It's not an intense concentration, but it's a concentration on a boat movement, on feeling of the boat speed, of the timing of the boat, and it's all to do with sort of a self-expression, if you like, of a group of people in an environment. In this case, it's this rowing boat. But I don't think there's very much difference between the way people are working here and the way people were working in the one you saw from 10 or 8 years before that. So, just looking at, for me, rowing's the way to look at rowing is in a pretty simple way, and that is to, just to try to do some basic movements really well, and to keep it as simple as possible. There's really only, for me, there's just the idea of there's the two phases obviously to the stroke, the bit in the water, the bit out, but for me it's just important that you get the right relationship between the one in the water and the one outside, and the one when you're on the slide coming forward again. And so it's maximising the effect in the water and then letting the boat do the rest while you don't disturb it on the recovery. And one of the things that I coach a lot is relaxation. You look at the hand grip, for example, of this guy here, or all of them, you find that their hands are very relaxed in their movements. But it's the ability to be poised forward on the front of the slide before the blade is entered in the water, which allows this maximum efficiency of being to pick the boat